Hey folks, here's a quick little vertical gamble ramble as I walk. Every day I take a walk for about an hour, trying to lose weight, and it's working. It's a little bit of a gray, cold day today, so I'm bundled up. And I'm a bit ironically bundled up, or I'm a bit of a contrarian, I should say. I've got my wonderful Jack Daniel's toque on, which keeps my head warm, but not too warm. And my Canada's not for sale. Bit of a juxtaposition, but I do love Jack Daniel's. Anyway, I've already 39 seconds into it, and I've already gone off track. So, anywho, just walking and thinking, quality looks a little shaky and not very good. But sometimes I get inspired. And I was just going through my file cabinet and I found a bunch of photographs from back in the day, childhood all the way up through my touring years in my 20s and 30s when I was always touring. Just reminded me, just what a great life and opportunity. What a great life we lived and what great opportunities we had being young musicians in Canada. There were gigs every night of the week, basically, if you wanted them. We would form these bands, and then if you were good enough, you would get an agent who would represent you. And agents were usually ex-musicians who had retired and were sick of being poor. And the nightclub system back then, the thing to do was to go see bands. Kids today like to go to karaoke, like to go to see a DJ, and that's cool, in order to be a bit old. So I got disconnected by my own fat thumbs. As I was saying, if you were a good band, you could work 52 weeks a year if you wanted to. Typically, our bands would work 50 or 51. We would take a few days off at least for Christmas, then be back at it for New Year's Eve, which is the highest paying night of the year. And sometimes we would take a week off in the summer. And but that's what we did. We were literally gone. I didn't have an apartment for years because I'd come home for a week and I'd just stay at my mom's. It made no sense having an apartment when you were constantly gone. But it was great. It was what a life, You had to be good or you didn't eat, is what happened. So you learned quickly what worked in front of live audiences, not just with the music, but also as a performer. You learned how to play with other musicians, get along in close environments. And it's funny because the closest thing I ever had to a team sport was being in a band. I never played team sports as a kid, so it took some getting used to because a lot of my hobbies were solitary, reading and things like that. So to get used to sharing space with 5 other guys sometimes was a little strange. And I probably wasn't always very good with it. I was very immature when I was 18 years old. I started playing in clubs at 15. By 17, I was playing full-time weekends. And then at 18, I got asked to join my first full-time touring band, Vandal, that played 51 weeks a year. And Vandal was an 8th circuit band, so I jumped into the fire with only about, a couple of years of apprenticeship. Like, we were one of the only bands to do 2 nights at Rock and Roll Heaven and sell it out. Gareth Brown, the manager of Heaven, told me that. We chatted on Facebook recently. And he said, yeah, he goes, I knew you guys would always sell it out. So I booked it for 2 nights, and we did. I was very proud of that. And I eventually got fired, and I can look back on it and see, I'm sure that I deserved it because I was very young, I was very immature. Probably a lot to deal with. I could be demanding, and I wasn't very schooled in life. So, however, I know they did regret firing me because they hired a guy after me that was just so busy that he drove them all crazy, and they ended up breaking up. And they told me after the fact, we're sorry we fired you. I said, yeah, well, it happens. But I went on to other things and kept going. And that was the thing. You could do that. You could go home, form another band, call that agent and say, hey, I'm ready to go back out. And you could be back to, working. Now, we didn't make a lot of money. I found a contract today for one of the gigs we did at the tail end was $4,700 for Monday to Saturday at the Blue Diamond at Thunder Bay, which used to be the Sleeping Giant. Now that was $4,700 with PA and lights provided. Rooms, a case of beer, and meals every day. So we used to carry PA and lights on the road with us. We had a 5-ton truck, sound man and a light man. So the PA and lights on the stage gear went in the 5-ton truck, and the band rode in a van. And you would go somewhere, and you would either play what I call the front half, Monday to Wednesday, or you'd play a weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday. Or you'd do a full week more often than not, especially up north and in Western Canada. And if you were really in demand, you would do 2 weeks. I can remember doing 2 weeks with Vandal in some places, Winnipeg and Timmins and Nasty Class as well, which is the closest we got to being settled. And I was a little horn dog back in the day too, as a young kid with self-esteem problems and a sex addiction. I mean, I remember sleeping with 15 girls. I was a boy in 14 days. Like, I mean, I was just, it didn't matter. I was trying to fill a hole. Keep the punch to yourself. Trying to fill a hole in myself because I had zero self-esteem. Being on stage was the only place in the world I felt comfortable. But anyway, I digress second time. Yeah, I mean, we were grossing, between $5,000 and $7,000 a week, which is really good money for the 80s and 90s. But of course, we used to have to pay for the PA and lights. The sound man was making $500 a week. Light man, $400. Gas on a 5-ton truck and a van. Expenses, etc., etc. So we walked away with $125 a guy back then, out of 5, 6, 7 grand. Think about that. And that contract I found today for $4,700 was nice because when that circuit was dying off, we decided, we saw the changes coming. We said, you know what? If we want a real career, we have to start writing music, recording demos, and shopping them to labels. So that's what we did. We got a townhouse in London. 2 townhouses. We settled down. At first it was one, all of us in one townhouse. And 2-bedroom townhouse with had 1.6 guys. The main bedroom had 3 sheets hung up, with 3 of us lived in the main bedroom. And we split it with privacy with bed sheets hanging from the ceiling. I digress. Number 3. So, yeah, we came off the road and started writing. And we'd go play the occasional weekend to make some money and to live, And we got this offer from the Blue Diamond of Thunder Bay. And he said, listen, because we always did really well there. They said, we want you guys to come up. It's summertime. I'll put the contract in here. And you can see it's for $4,700. But we didn't have to take up any PA and lights or any crew or anything. So what we did was we hired some friends to drive the van and the equipment up. My good buddy Tim Hendry and the late dear departed Dan Fawcett. I almost forgot that Dan was involved in this. Went up with a couple of friends of the band. Dan's girlfriend at the time, Leah, who we love. She was like a sister of the band. And Baduska Kwe and Mary Moore Dokum, who was Stan's girlfriend at the time, B. They drove up and we flew. Because at the time flights were really cheap. And you know what, I booked it and researched it. And I went, you know what, we could do this, or we could still manage to walk away with a nice chunk of change. So that's what we did. We flew up, and the guys drove the gear up. Took their time. They stopped in Sault Ste. Marie, where Tim was from. And it was great, because we didn't have to haul a PA and lights up there. And we played for a week. Partied every night and had a great time. And it was a good week. The bar made money, and we were happy at the end of the week. They paid us, and we had money left over each. Like I think we might have made $500-600 for the week each after expenses, which in 1989 or 90, whatever it is, was good money. So that's one good memory from that time, But when we were actively in it, playing every night, it was wild, man. I mean, you're so young that you don't think about money, you don't think about the business. And this is what, now that I'm older, I know, this is what they rely on. They being the industry people, club owners, agents and stuff like that. They rely on you not knowing what's going on, just being happy to play. Because look at young musicians. give them any opportunity to play, they'll do it. It costs them money, it costs them trouble, blah, blah. They just want a gig, and I understand that. That's all I wanted to do. I hated school, I was unhappy at home with my parents, and I just wanted to play music. So, I understood that this was the case. So, the sound man was making $500 a week, and I was making $125. And I remember on the Sundays, we'd go find somewhere to eat, like at Casey's or something, and he would order a steak dinner. And I couldn't afford it. I'd have to scrape my money together for a hamburger. But I didn't care about that. Fat fingers again. I didn't care because I was playing music with my friends, making a little bit of money, enough to survive, roof over my head. And it was great, just can't explain it. It makes you a much better musician because you learn the subtle things before. You learn what works, learn to play with other people, you learn to jam, to improvise. You learn to tune drums because you have to work with a sound man to get a good sound. Become a good entertainer, which I think I am. Well, I know I am. I've worked hard at it. So it's really cool. It was great. It was a great opportunity. It was a lot of fun to look back on it. I really wish younger musicians today still had the chance to do it, because it's not something you make a career out of, but you can do it, especially when you're young, to put in the hours, the 10,000 hour rule, and become legit, And I see young kids today, they're so good. Kalen Chase, my young friend, was a fantastic drummer from the London area. All he wants to do is play drums, man. I see him and he just practices all the time. He's so dedicated. He's much more dedicated to drumming than I ever was. I was always dedicated to rock and roll, being in a band, but I was never one to sit down and work on paradiddles. It bored me. But Kalen is fantastic, driven, smart, and good. It used to be that we would say he was good for his age, but he's a young man now. He's not just good for his age, he's just good. And I really hope for nothing but success for him. Wanted to get out there and, stay with Charlie Edward and his drummer, my young buddy. They're all great guys, the young musicians are the next generation, and we really want to see them succeed because it's a tough business, And if you're lucky, if you get to do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And that's a cliche, but it's a true cliche. So we used to do this, and we loved it. It wasn't a job per se. It was just something that we loved to do. And we considered ourselves lucky. Now, you do have to get off the merry-go-round after a while, because it's soul-sucking after a bit. You can't be 40 and making $125 a week. And we would see these guys on tour and become friends with them. But you could see, they were in their 40s, teasing up their thinning hair, and a bit of a belly, popping out of the spandex. Not being judgmental, just true. They were just clinging on to it. They loved it so much. The other option was going to work in a factory. And the other side of that coin is that a lot of my friends did do that. Two things happened. They would either meet the irony of meeting a beautiful woman, falling in love, meeting her at a gig, and the one thing she was attracted to was seeing him up on stage. And I can't tell you how many guys I know that happened to, and then their wives said, okay, now change. And it's part of growing up, right? They would get engaged, get married, put the road behind them, get a car factory job with good benefits, get married, have a family, and be adults. And I understand that. But as I was saying, sorry, I'm walking uphill. As I was saying with the other guys, you see the guys that can't put it behind them. And it's sad too. It's sad to see good musicians hang up their jock, but it's also sad to see people that don't know when it's time to leave the party, as Paul Stanley puts it. But I get it now. I'm 56, 57 in a few weeks. Well, a couple months rather, August 3rd. And I look at it. Yeah, I spent all this time getting and being good at one thing. And now that the opportunities aren't there anymore, well, now what? What do I have? Bad credit rating, no savings, no pension, no life insurance, no security, financially certainly. Bad hearing, and not really many job opportunities or options. It's a scary world to look at. I mean, luckily, I don't drag anyone into my selfishness. I recognize what I am, and I live my life a certain way. But my decisions don't affect other people. I try not to let them affect other people by dragging anyone to a relationship. Tried it. The good was good and the bad was terrible. Period. But, as long as I have enough for me and my cat, have shelter and food, I'm a happy man. But I'm not content. I went through a period of real unhappiness and very real depression with life events and things that we don't need to get into. But a lot of people were affected in those years. I came out of it the other side and I'm okay now. I'm better. Depression never fully goes away, but that's another vlog. Digression number 4. But now it's just discontent, this feeling of ill ease. I'm ill at ease. I don't know what to do, where to direct my energy and my time. And I thought that once I got back into it, I had a good reputation as a player. I used to play, even locally, a couple hundred nights a year. Nope. Calls aren't being returned. People aren't hiring me. It's hard not to take personally because, I know it's not personal because, as I said, the opportunities have dried up, the circuit's gone, things have changed. But even at this point, obviously I'd love to find a touring act, but, when you're pushing 60 and from London, Ontario, Lenny Kravitz isn't about to come knocking on your door. At this point, just I don't want to form a band from scratch. I'm sick of that. A band that's working, that needs a drummer, play a couple gigs a month to shake off the rust and have some fun. And it's come full circle, hasn't it? Because I started playing drums with no thoughts of money, careers, gigs, just to play. And that's what I want to get back to, ladies and gentlemen. And I will. So I will see you out there soon.